Namaste, and welcome to yet another edition of the series that we call Amatya Sampat. This is a series which discusses all the excellences that an Amatya ought to have. Excellences which makes him or her effective in his or her role, assisting the Swami to achieve the purpose of the organization, and being a leader to the rest of the organization, emulating ways which others could follow. Now, the excellence that we are discussing today is called Prabhaavyukt. Prabhav means impact, so Prabhaavyukt would mean somebody who can and has an impact. Now, impact has to be on something. So, where are we speaking about this impact? We're talking about the Amatya having an impact on every element of the ecosystem that he belongs to. The ecosystem is defined as Saptang in the Arthashastra. The center of the ecosystem is the Swami or the leader. Then the Amatya, the excellences for whom we are discussing. The Janpad, which means the population or the customers that an organization is servicing, followed by Durg, which is the fort, Kosh, which is the treasury, Dand, which is the army or employees, we could say, and then finally Mitra or allies in the ecosystem. So, an Amatya needs to have Prabhav on each and every element of the ecosystem to achieve the purpose of the organization. Now, as soon as we speak of impact, what usually comes to our mind is a person who's credible, has immense amount of social equity, respect, so that he or she is able to persuade or convince people to what he or she is suggesting to be done. Yes, you are right if you thought so, but it is not only about communication. It goes much beyond it to do things to actually create a real impact. And I thought the best way for us to understand what this means would be by a small illustration from the industry itself. So I'm going to tell you a small anecdote. I shouldn't call it an anecdote, it's like a case study from an organization about somebody who went on and became a great Swami. But this is when he was in the role of an Amatya. I'm speaking of Mr. Subroto Bagchi when he was working in Wipro. We all know he later went on to become the founder of Mindtree, which became a great organization and continues to be so as a part of L&T Infotech now. This was the time when he was in Wipro, and Azim Premji had given him an additional responsibility to bring down the number of debtors that Wipro had. This was the time when Wipro was selling hardware, which is computers. The story goes that when Subroto Bagchi was given this responsibility, there was an immense problem of not only receivables, but cash flow also within the organization. Cash flow to an extent that there was an embargo on travel, and the organization had taken severe austerity measures just to protect itself from not falling apart. And this was a time when he was given the responsibility of taking care of recovering the market and actually managing the entire data system for Wipro. When Subroto Bagchi went on and figured it out that what had happened is that the people who were selling computers were engineers with an MBA degree, and they weren't the greatest of people to actually ask for money from their customers because they all wanted to be that nice guy. They thought that asking for money was not good. The second was very often people resigned and the receivables just lay orphaned without anybody actually asking for the money. The third he figured out was that the entire system of making purchase orders wasn't in favor of Wipro. The customers, as a result of the weak paperwork, could take any pretext to not pay up the money. So what he did is he figured it out that what was important was to actually convince the last two men and women in the line, which is the engineer who was selling and the area manager who was actually supervising the engineer, to understand that it's very important to get the purchase order paperwork right and also have a system of asking for money when customers were not paying up. Remember, I told you there was a travel embargo in Wipro at that time. But he went up and spoke to Azim Premji and impressed on him. It was very important for the organization to reach out to these people and explain to them what the whole thing was. So Azim Premji was convinced, and Wipro for the first time called all area managers on into one place for a 2 day session to understand and explore how to solve this entire problem. This was all about communication with his Swami, which is Azim Premji. And yes, he was able to persuade him. And then he was able to actually connect with all the area managers and tell them what the issue was. But did it stop at that? No. After that, Subrata Bakshi went on a touring jig across the country where he would go with these managers, sit with them, look at the data sheet, and also walk to the customer along with these young engineers to actually exhibit to them what is a right way to be nice to the customer, but at the same time firm too. He worked with the entire commercial team to make sure that purchase orders were clean and glitch free so that customers did not have any excuse to not pay up. For that, he drove an entire campaign across the organization with posters made saying purchase orders need to be as clean as the waters of the Kaveri. And he asked the design agency to make posters, which was so beautiful that everybody would want to keep them in their house. So posters got over in as soon as they were released. And he says that even customers asked for them, they were so beautiful. And within, I do not remember the span of time, but less than 6 months, they had recovered most of the money from the market and they had put together a system in which such a situation would not arrive yet again. So if you just look back at the case, then Subrata Bakshi as the Amatya was able to have an impact on all elements of the ecosystem. The Swami we just discussed, Janpad, which is the customer, we just told you how that they got impacted. Durg, which is the system's internal infrastructure, he fixed so that such a problem would not happen again. The army, which is the employees, he reached out to them directly to engage with them that such a thing, first, the problem was managed, and secondly, an attitude was built that this problem wouldn't occur again. And obviously, yes, the treasury, the money, because he collected the money and there was a direct impact on that. So here, this was the example of what being Prabhaavyukt actually means. Now comes reflection time for us. It's great to listen to these excellences and also appreciate these small case studies and stories that we get. But what does it mean for us? What it means for us is to introspect and see that what can I do to be more Prabhaavyukt? So can I make a couple of suggestions? Why don't you just sit down and reflect on those times when you've been really impactful? Because believe me, all of us have strengths and it makes sense in strengthening our strengths because that's where our entire effectiveness comes. So that's one. Second, think about a time when you were not that effective. Think about what could you have done differently that could have made you more effective. Are those behaviors something which is a part of you? Then probably it's time to make incremental small changes so that you actually make your way towards becoming more and more Prabhaavyukts. So thank you so much for watching in. Think about those questions. Tell us what you think. Put them down in the comment box because this is a community learning space and we're learning from one another. So thank you so much and namaste.